All right, guys, welcome to another episode. Today, we're going to be talking about the use of pressure in dog training. The reason why I decided to make this episode is because recently, over the past 2 weeks or so, I've been getting some comments, not a lot, I haven't been flooded with them, but I've been getting some comments here and there on videos that I had made a while ago on different topics regarding or surrounding the topic of pressure, whether it's one of the prong collar videos that I made, or my recent video that I made of this bully breed or bully mix that I'm training right now, and the most recent video that I made with this little white pitty, it's I'm basically going over how we introduce training, the concept of training to this dog with the use of pressure. And the reason why the use of pressure is very important to us is because we understand that animals are capable of making decisions. Okay, if you have a heartbeat and you have a brain, any sort of a brain, you're going to make decisions. With the ability to make decisions comes the ability to make the wrong decisions, to make decisions that are not always in your best interest. It doesn't serve you. It doesn't serve the greater purpose. It doesn't serve your environment. Right? As a human being, when you make those decisions, you pay for it in a bunch of different ways. You pay for it yourself. You can pay for it immediately. You can pay for it later. Okay? Or maybe you don't pay for it. Maybe somebody else pays for it. And either you move on from that because you don't care, or you do care, and the social pressure is the consequence that lets you know I should not have done that. And you're able to rationalize that. If you say something stupid, it hurts somebody's feelings, and it bothers you, and it makes you think, man, I should never have said that I feel awful. Even though there was no direct consequence to you, it was the direct consequence to somebody else. And indirectly, this gave you the consequence of you felt guilty, you felt bad. And then you made that decision later to go, I am not going to say that again. Right? There was something that felt unpleasant to you that made you go, I am not going to do that again. Now, because you are able to rationalize these consequences, they make sense to you. But when we have an animal living in our environment, inside our four walls, right? Inside of our house, and they're part of our routine, they don't have the sense of the complex way to rationalize that you and I have. Like, they don't do something and then you get your feelings hurt, and then the dog goes, oh, like, I feel awful. My owner feels bad that I tore up her curtains. Or my owner feels bad that I took a shit on her bed. Man, that makes me feel bad, so I'm not going to do that again. No, they're just decisions for the dog. They're bad because we deem them as such. Now, some of these decisions can be directly bad to the animal. Obviously, if the dog runs into traffic, now we're not talking about the decision not serving the owner. Now this is a decision that could directly impact this animal in a really horrific way. Of course, to the animal, they don't see that. They don't rationalize it as such. They don't go, I'm about to get hit by a car, so I'm not gonna go that way. They're just living in the moment. They're chasing whatever they're chasing, and it just so happens that the vehicle is there, right? So why is the concept of pressure very important for us to teach? It's because this is how we can provide some of those consequences that make sense to the dog. Now, not every consequence that involves pressure is stop. Some of the another use of pressure is to have the dog go, right? To have the dog do what we want it to do, what it needs to do. It's not always stop. It's not always no. It's always, hey, you have to do this. Right? So why it's important again, it's because if we don't introduce the concept of pressure at any point in the training, then what happens is inevitably you're going to surprise the dog with the jolt of pressure that it will not expect, that will not feel good, and that will, if anything, will confuse the dog. Okay, so if, let's say, for instance, I just teach the dog recall, right, to come back, and I'm like, hey, good, awesome, hands off, come back, you get paid, 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 without ever once putting any little bit of pressure on the dog. Hey, come back, awesome, you get paid, come back, awesome, you get paid. And then one day I go, come back, and the dog goes, nope. And then I go, wham, come back. Now what I did there is I surprised the dog with a sudden jolt of pressure. Now the dog will go, well, crap, I guess I will come back. Or the dog will go, what does that mean? I don't know. What did you want me to do? Right? So we could do it that way, or while we're teaching what the recall is, we go, hey, come back. And there was also a tiny little bit of pressure on the leash. Not a correction, just a tiny bit, like a quick, easy to digest, winning formula, pop, right? Come back and you're still getting paid. You're still winning. It's not stress related to it. The pressure just happens to be there a little bit. Right? If we teach the name, and by the way, the recall, I'm gonna be making a video on this dog, the one I just told you about. I'm gonna make a video on how we introduced the concept of pressure. Well, I already have that on the website, not on the YouTube channel. There is some on the YouTube channel, but there is more in depth, more detail on the website on doctriningismypassion.com. If you go to the members area tab, there's an area there for you to gain access to exclusive content. And I'm going to show you also how we did the recall, how we introduced the recall, but how we also introduced a tiny bit of concept of pressure during the introduction of the recall, during the introduction of the down, during the introduction of training. It's going to be there on the website, doctriningismypassion.com. There's a tab on there for access to the membership area, and it's all on there in detail with explanations and prompts on the screen. So the reason we do that is because that way later, as we demand more of the dog, as we put more distractions in the environment, as we make that decision to be harder to make, that choice to be harder to make, if we have to use more pressure to let the dog know, hey, dude, no, you have to come back. Okay, that's not an option. This is, not coming back potentially could be hazardous to you. Now we have to use a form of pressure. Now the dog is not confused. They're not stressed. They understand because they're not jolted. They're not surprised with the sudden jolt of pressure. That's why it's very important to do it that way. And you don't have to. You could train whatever way you want. And if you're happy and your dogs are happy and your clients are happy, hey, I don't care. It's none of my business how you do your thing. All power to you, right? I'm just telling you how I do it and how we do it with our business and why we do it that way. Why we introduce it that way. We see less problems with a dog not understanding later on as we use pressure. It's just much, much easier to digest if we introduce it early in the program. I used to teach at Starmark Academy. I was an instructor there for 7 years, teaching people how to train dogs. And we had a curriculum. We used different tools. We went from marker training, what you would consider purely positive training, all the way to the proper use of training tools like prong collars and remote collars. So we would teach a curriculum that in the industry we would call balanced. And we would have students occasionally that would flat out refuse, or be very, very reluctant to use pressure. And the reason was because they had this idea, this romantic idea that it could be done without it. I'm telling you right now, it's an animal. You got to get over that, okay? It's an animal. So they believed, they were like, no, I'm not going to do that, right? Every now and then we have a student like that. I'm like, okay, dude, we're not going to make you. We're just presenting you with a curriculum. We have the classes. We're going to do this in class, but we're not going to hold your hand and we're not going to make you do it. It's your choice. We do have some practical tests throughout the program that if you fail to meet those requirements, there's a consequence for that. Academic consequence to that. That could result in your dismissal from the program. But if you want to do it, and they were very reasonable timelines, very reasonable deadlines, very reasonable expectations that we put on them. We wouldn't do anything that was way out of their ability to achieve in the period of time that we gave them. But we will have these people every now and then that would not use pressure. Everybody else would follow along with the program. And yes, they would struggle, but they will learn, they will get better. And most people, the success rate was very high. The passing rate was very high in all the practical tests. So these students that were against the use of pressure early on would not use pressure. But then another detail to remember too, these dogs that they were working with, they were assigned to them. Sometimes they brought their dogs, but they had to take on a rescue dog that we would assign them. Now they're taking on a rescue dog that was in the shelter, right? That was in the shelter for a period of time. A dog that had been rehomed at some point or surrendered at some point. A dog that probably had most of these dogs had reward histories with very inappropriate behaviors. And now we have these students that have this romantic idea that the animal does not need pressure at all, ever. Well, what would happen is they would just refuse to use pressure. But inevitably, the time would come where either, they would notice that they were falling behind. And so now now they had the pressure of the social pressure one, but also the pressure of crap. I have a test coming up in week 8 or week this. Again, very reasonable time frame for them to meet those requirements that were not even that crazy. And suddenly they would just go, okay, this dog keeps doing this. And then they will jolt the dog with sudden pressure. Like suddenly they were like, no, you have to do this now. And the dogs would all obviously get stressed out. And then it would become a self-fulfilling prophecy for these students. They would go, see, this is why I don't like to use pressure, because if I use pressure, this is exactly what happens. Or the other thing that would happen is they would suddenly use pressure, and now the dog would be like, no, F you, I'm going to bite you now. And then again, another self-fulfilling prophecy. Now you have the very common saying with purely positive trainers, which is, if you use pressure, if you use corrections, it creates aggression. And it would become a self-fulfilling prophecy again for these people. And they're like, yeah, see, this is why I don't use pressure, because when I do, the dog either shuts down or the dog just becomes aggressive. And then I would tell them, no, that's not why they're doing that. It's not the concept of pressure. It's not the pressure that did that. It's you. You did not introduce the concept of pressure early on. And suddenly you decided, we're going to cram all that pressure in this week. We're going to cram all that pressure today. That's why the dog A got stressed out, or B responded in a way that was more bold. Because suddenly you're telling it, this is how the rules are. That's why. So the proper use of pressure will not create aggression, will not shut the dog down. It's when you don't know what you're doing. It's when you don't understand that the dog is an animal. That's when you, quote unquote, create aggression. That's when you, quote unquote, shut the dog down. It's not the use of pressure. It is how you introduce the pressure. You could introduce it in a way that makes sense to the dog, that it's easy to digest, and it is through a winning formula, so that later higher forms of pressure, if necessary or when necessary, don't surprise the dog. Or you could introduce it by surprising the dog with it. So that's the problem with not using pressure in training. Again, you don't have to. You could do it whatever way you want. I'm telling you why I do it this way. Okay? If you watch my my videos, the videos that I told you about, they're also on YouTube. This is a condensed version of it. The more detailed version of it is going to be on the website in the membership area. The condensed version of the videos that I'm telling you about are still on YouTube. You're still going to see what I'm doing and how I'm introducing pressure. If you look at the e-collar videos on the YouTube channel, you're going to see I do the same thing. I introduce the concept of e-collar pressure through easy to digest, low forms of pressure, and through a winning formula. And so that later, when I have to correct the dogs, it's not a surprise. It's not like a sudden jolt of, F you, you're going to now come back to me because I said so. Okay? You have to think about this. You have to think about why the use of pressure is important. It's such a unrealistic view. It's just such a weird and unrealistic romanticized view of dogs that we have as a society, to the point where we have books dedicated to it. Now, like dogs cannot make the wrong decision. Can you really, as a rational human being, think to yourself, no dog should ever hear the word no? Can you, as a rational human being, sit there and think for a moment and think to yourself, the dogs, they don't need any pressure. They don't need any of that. They could all be done with just positive reinforcement, with just love and affection and just rewards. That's all we ever need. Can you, as a rational human being, say that your dog will never make the wrong decision? A decision that it will not serve it, a decision that is not in its best interest, okay, that could directly affect its health, or a decision that will affect you, your household, your routine. No, you can't. You can't possibly think that way. You know, like I'm all for love of animals, right? I'm all for that. But you have to understand, a dog will make the wrong decisions. If it's capable of making decisions, it's capable of making the wrong decisions. A human being can understand consequence. They can rationalize consequence. A dog cannot. Okay, yeah, they can in their own way. If they mess with the wrong dog and that dog gives them a beating, yeah, they're gonna understand consequence. But in a household environment, in a domestic setting, and you leave your dog there, you don't think that dog is gonna put his mouth on things it shouldn't? No, of course not. You don't think that dog is gonna choose not to come back to you instead of going after whatever it wants to go outside? You truly think that thousands of repetitions of you feeding it every time that he comes to you in a controlled environment, you think after thousands of times of that, you truly believe that on the 1001st time that this dog, is in that situation, that it will not even think about not coming back to you? No, that's unrealistic. That's completely unrealistic. It's just such a weird way of looking at dogs. Like they're not even animals. Like they're just some sort of angel, some sort of plant that we should just cherish and treat them like these angels with paws. If you have that view of a dog, you have a problem. Okay, I love my dogs, right? I love my dogs. We have 5. What, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, right. So I love my dogs. My wife has her dog. We have house pets, and I have my competition dog, right? And I love my dogs. I love them, but I know what they are. I know that they are capable of making decisions that are not going to be in their best interest, or in my best interest for that matter. So obviously, if they are animals that are capable of not making the right decision, why would I not prepare myself and them to understand consequences that let it know, hey, dude, that was the wrong decision. Let's do this instead. How about we don't do that? Let's do this instead. Okay, you don't want to do that ever under any circumstances. Don't ever do that. That is highly inappropriate and is very hazardous to you or to another animal or to somebody else. Don't ever do that. If you don't think that that's necessary, and you truly believe that it could all be done with just, hey, come back. Hey, no, this is great. Hey, this is great. Hey, this is awesome. Hey, this is great. You don't truly, fully understand the capability of an animal. You truly don't. Here's the other thing that I've gotten, right? Where people go, well, it's science. Like, hey, no, science is on my side. That's a comment that guy. Hey, no, this is how it's done. Science is on my side. I'm like, okay, listen. Okay, science is on your side. How were these experiments conducted? In a lab. Controlled environments. Skinner boxes. Is your backyard a lab? Is your house a Skinner box? And aside from that, you know what they did with science too? High levels of pressure. That's what these people don't understand about science. Like, oh, science. Do you know what they did in science? Do you know that they would they would put dogs and also rats in containers, and they would electrify the surface to measure how much intensity they would put into a particular behavior? They did that. You're not aware of that? Of some of the stuff that was done in science? They would literally put these animals in a box, and the ground, the flooring surface, would have different degrees of shock, okay? Of electricity. And yeah, so there is that in science. Okay? The Skinner boxes, like these metal boxes with just one option for these pigeons, right? Is your backyard a Skinner box, a lab? No, it's not. So, no, science is not on your side. You don't work with your dog in a lab and then put it in a cage until the next trial. You don't do that, right? That's what the scientists did. Okay, experiment, or let's do this trial. Okay, good. We got our results. Let's put it back in the cage. Next animal. Okay, this, and this result. Okay, next. Let's put it back in the cage. Next animal. You're not a freaking scientist, guy. You're a regular person, a homeowner, or a dog trainer. And you're working with domestic animals that are living in a human routine. You're not working with pigeons. Okay? So because we understand that the dogs are animals, we understand that we are going to treat them like animals. That sounds bad, right? Whenever I would say that to the students, like, hey, your dog is an animal. You have to treat it like an animal. Treat your dog like a dog. I get these weird looks. And I would see them and I would say, that sounds bad, doesn't it? Treat your dog like a dog. Treat it like an animal. Why does this sound bad? If that sounds bad to you, if you get a little bit of a shock in your system when you hear treat your dog like a dog, treat your dog like an animal, your dog is not a baby. If I say those things and it kind of does not feel right, you have too much of a romantic view of your dog. You have to come back to reality, and you have to realize that at the end of the day, your dog is an animal. Why you need to understand that is when you view your dog as an animal, you're less likely to get emotional. Don't hold them to a ridiculous high standard. I recently saw in a Facebook group a tragic story. Okay, this happened today where I saw the post. I'm not going to go into detail. I'm not going to say the name of the person or the name of the Facebook group, but this person is putting on the Facebook group that he needs to rehome or get rid of this dog, one of his dogs, because while they were gone, they left the dog with the other dog unattended, and apparently this was a regular occurrence. And while they were gone, the dog that they're rehoming now, or that they're wanting to surrender, that dog attacked the older dog so severely that the injuries that other dog sustained were so severe that it had to be put down. So now this guy's going, I need to rehome the dog. And, I have to get rid of the dog. I can't have this dog here. You know where that stemmed from? That stems from romanticizing your dog. It's like we have this view of, oh, we got the dog as a family member, and it has to have access to the whole house, and you can lay here and do that while I'm gone. But the problem with that is that is not realistic. If I told you, hey, here's a duck, I'm gonna get a duck for you, okay? A duck. And when you leave the house, just leave your duck. Just leave it out. Just don't create it. Just leave it out in the open. What would you think? You'd probably be like, are you crazy? Right? Or you might go, okay, yeah, I'll leave it out. And then if you come home and you go, well, I came home and I saw shit everywhere. A dog jumped on my counter and there was shit on the counter. And there is water that he splashed everywhere. Would you be surprised? No, you'd be like, well, it's a duck. Right? But for some reason, it's like different for the dog. Oh, no, the dog is just great. He's just going to sleep and he loves to be out. What happens is a lot of times it's just an inconvenience. The case that this guy went through, the tragedy that this family went through, and I call it a tragedy because losing your dog, even though I am saying that dogs are just animals, I mean it never feels good to lose your pet, to lose your dog. We love our dogs, so it doesn't always end like this. Usually, you hear about this as an inconvenience, like the owners are gone and the dog, will tear the furniture, right? The dog will go through the trash. And in some instances, it's something more severe like this. And I've gotten this phone call too from friends that, I was gone and the dog, same thing, injured the dog so bad, right? It almost resulted in tragedy. It almost resulted in the other dog losing its life. And the answer that I gave this person was like, you need to watch, you need to make sure that this dog is supervised and that while you're gone, this dog is crated. It was awful. I mean, I felt bad that this person went through. It's really awful. I can't imagine going through that. And the question that I got in return was, so are you saying that I shouldn't really trust him? And I said, exactly. That's exactly what I'm saying. It's an animal. Some dogs have certain tendencies and certain traits that make it so that you shouldn't leave them unattended with certain things. Okay, yeah, there are some dogs that just want to nap and sleep. And you have some dogs that have different traits that will get more destructive while you're gone. So you have to be aware of that. But, this tragedy that happened to this gentleman did not have to happen. And I blame it on this unrealistic ideologies, unrealistic view of what a dog is. It's an animal. So the concept of pressure is very important when it comes to training your dog, because at some point you're gonna have to communicate to the dog in a way that it makes sense to the dog. Hey, this is how it has to get done. So remember that. All right, guys, so make sure that you like and subscribe if you're listening to this on YouTube. If you're listening to this on the podcast, go check out the YouTube channel. Check out my books. I have 4 books out on Amazon. Just go to Amazon, type in the search bar, William Garrido, Garrido. And like I said, check out the membership website. It's on dogtrainingismypassion.com. And I'm putting videos on there weekly, exclusive content on different topics. I have a bunch of videos just on e-collar training, and I'm not done. I'm still putting out more content on there, plus other information behavior modification training, obedience, and protection training, other stuff. So make sure you go check it out. I'm adding to it weekly. It's dogtrainingismypassion.com. See you guys in the next episode.